Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Jenny. I'm from JennyCardDesigns. My YouTube channel contains content that is intended to share paper crafting tutorials and inspiration with all of you. I hope that you enjoy. So this morning I woke up fairly early and it was quiet in my house, and I thought maybe I'll make some cards. So I came to my desk and I pulled out a bunch of stuff, and I was just kind of racking my brain thinking, what kind of technique could I do that would be interesting and fun for you guys to watch? So I really thought about it, and I thought, why don't I just do something clean and simple? And since I love these Slimline cards so much and I have a bunch of them made up and ready to go, I'm going to make some clean and simple cards using my Slimline cards. Now, if you haven't seen my Slimline card tutorial, I will link to a video and a playlist where you can see how to make these cards very simply with some free downloadable templates so that you can make them, the card and the envelope, yourself for free using any cardstock in your stash. I think that's the best part about it. So moving on to today's projects, I'm going to create 3 cards, and I've got my panels and everything already cut up, and I will list all the measurements to my cards down below in the description. So I'm taking my white panel and I'm just trying to figure out my orientation, and I'm going to slip my cardstock into my MISTI and use my magnet to hold my paper down. And I'm going to choose one of the stamps from this JennyCardDesigns set. Now this stamp set is new to me. I just picked this up recently, but it's an older stamp set designed by Teresa Momber called Elegant Florals, and I think it's really pretty. Okay, so I'm going to take the outline leaf image. I'm going to put that down on my cardstock and get it picked up with the door of my MISTI, and make sure I reposition my cardstock back into the corner. And then I'm going to ink up this leaf with the Obsidian Amalgam ink. This is a nice dark black ink, and I'll get that stamped, and I'll wipe off any of that ink that landed on my MISTI mouse pad. I'm going to grab the acetate from the stamp package, and I'm going to lay that over top of my panel and use my magnet to hold it in place. This way I can reposition my stamp and not worry about getting any ink smudges on my panel. So I lay my stamp down over the acetate where I want it, and once I'm happy with its placement, I'll pick it up with the door of the MISTI, and then I'll move that acetate sheet and reposition my cardstock, making sure it's in the top left corner. And then I'm going to ink it up again with the Obsidian Amalgam ink and get that stamped, and then wipe off any of the excess. And then I'm going to change over to this, what I think is a dandelion. I'm not quite sure. I think it's a dandelion. I'm going to stamp this with JennyCardDesigns charcoal brown ink just to bring in some more neutral tones to this card. This card is just going to be green, and I thought a little bit of brown would help bring it to life a little bit. So I stamp that in a few spots, and then I'll get that cleaned up, and then I'm going to do some coloring. I've got some All-to-New artist markers, and I think these markers are great. The price point is amazing on these markers, and I'll link in the description down below where you can get these markers, and I'm pretty sure that they're still on sale. So I'm just going to color these leaves in, and I first started with my normal flicking motion. This is how I like to cheat and color flowers, and I decided, how about we try something different today? So I decided to be brave, and I started coloring the leaves in solidly. And I got nice and comfortable, and I just kind of rested my elbow on the table, holding up my head because, you know, I was just relaxing, having a good time. And I colored in all of these leaves, and then I had to sit up for the next part. So here I took this second darker color in this All-to-New artist marker set, and I just started flicking in the darker color. I was trying to create some shading, and I don't really worry too much about a light source or anything like that. I just sort of flick in that second darker color, and that's all I do. I think that was simple and easy enough, and I think it looks really neat. And then I take that same green marker and I added a little bit into the stem of my dandelion here, just to add some more depth in the center along the stem and the center of that dandelion. And that's going to be it for that. I think that's simple and elegant and pretty. So I'm going to take this back to my Misty and stamp my greeting from the same stamp set, the Elegant Florals. I grabbed the Thinking of You stamp. This script is so pretty. I really think it's a really nice, elegant looking font. I'm going to stamp it with the Obsidian Amalgam ink, and then I'm going to adhere this panel down to my black layer. And I really think that helps everything come together here. I'm really embracing the white space on these cards today. I think just creating simple, basic designs really help your card to look extra special. Sometimes I think we feel like we have to fill in all of the space, and I don't think it's always necessary. So I'm going to adhere this panel down to my Slimline card, and then I decided it just needed a little touch of sparkle. So I grabbed some sequins. This is just a Tailored Expression sequin mix, and it's got a bunch of different sizes. And I like it because it's white and silver and iridescent, and it kind of goes with any project. So I always keep this little bottle on my desk, and I use it all the time. So I'm just going to adhere these in a few spaces where I think that it'll pick up a little bit of sparkle and make it look pretty. And I'm using my Marvy Jewel Picker and some Connect glue, and I just adhere down those sequins with a little drop of glue, and then that is it for this card. I think between the simplicity and the elegance of the Slimline card, and then that gold foil on the inner flap of the envelope really brings this whole card together. It's really stunning and makes you look fancy. So that's it for card number 1. Here's a close-up look at my finished card, and later on we're going to come back in and do a little something to the envelopes at the end of this video. Okay, let's move into project number 2. For my second Slimline card, I'm going to be using a pink-toned Slimline card and envelope that I've had pre-made sitting on my desk for about a month. And I'm going to use this beautiful tulip stamp in my Elegant Florals stamp set. So I'm going to get that stamp positioned onto my cardstock where I want it, and I'll get it picked up on the door of my Misty. And then I've just got some post-it notes. I want to do some sort of lazy masking. I didn't want the leaf on the right hand side of my tulip to stamp so that I could put other tulips beside it. So I just covered up that little leaf and inked up the flower, and then removed the post-it note and then stamped it down. Now I did this a few times to get the floral arrangement that I wanted, and then for the last flower I wanted it to kind of sit behind the other tulips that are there. So I stamped it on a piece of masking paper, and I just cut out a little bit of like a lazy mask, and I just kind of covered up where I wanted the images to not overlap, and then tape those little post-it notes down into place, and then lay my tulip over top and get that picked up onto the door of my Misty, stamp it with my Obsidian Amalgam ink, and then once we remove these little post-it note scraps, then you'll see that that tulip is set in behind the other tulips, and I think that just makes a simple card one step up. And then I grabbed the greeting that says congratulations, and I inked that up and stamped it using the same amalgam ink. And then I'm going to color this in. Now I lost some footage here. What happened was my phone rang and I paused my video. And then I continued talking on the phone with my mom, and I wasn't recording. So I didn't get the coloring in for this card, but here are my colored in tulips. So I'm going to adhere those to my black layer panel and then pull in my Slimline card and adhere this to my card base. And then I'm going to grab some Wink of Stella. I just wanted a little bit of sparkle in here, but I didn't want to add any bulk to it. So I just colored in my flowers and the leaves with my Wink of Stella to give it some glitter. And here's a look at the finished card. The light is really catching that sparkle on my card. So that's it for project number 2, Simple and Elegant Tulips. Okay, moving on to project number 3. I started working on a panel and I didn't like the direction it was headed in, so I scrapped it and started all over again. So I've got a piece of my cardstock loaded up into my MISTI, and I'm using my acetate as my stamp is dirty at this point. So I'm going to line up my stamp where I want it, ink it with my Obsidian Amalgam ink, and close the door of my MISTI and stamp that. And then I'm going to use my acetate again, reposition my stamp, and then for this one, I'm going to mask off the top part of that little floral element. There's some buds on there and I don't want the images to look identical. So I'm covering that little top bud up with a Post-it note, and then I'll wipe off any extra ink, and then I'll get that stamped. And then I'm going to come back in one more time and just stamp the top part of that floral image a little bit lower on my panel. And then I'm going to use the greenery, the leaf element that I used in my first card. And I need to mask off one of these flowers, so I just quickly stamp the image on a piece of my Post-it note. And I'll get that adhered to my panel, covering my little flower so that I can stick some greenery kind of laying in behind that flower, just to fill up that little corner space a bit. I noticed that these images didn't have any leaves on it, and I wanted to have some green in this panel once it's all colored in. So that's why I added those little sprigs in behind. Okay, so I'm going to grab the greeting and I'll stamp that, and it says happy birthday to you, and I'll ink it with my Obsidian Amalgam ink as well. And then we're going to do some coloring. So I'm going to grab my alcohol markers again. I'm using the green and the blue artist markers from Altenew, and I'm going to just color all of the stems, and then I'm going to color these little buds as well, and I'm making sure that I leave the tips white because I'm going to come back in with another color and I want it to look like they're getting ready to bloom. So I colored all the green. I didn't do any shading, I just laid down some flat color, and then I came in with a medium tone blue and just blended that blue into the green. And then I'm going to take that same blue and start coloring my flowers, starting from the center and working my way out. And then I'm going to take a lighter color blue and come back in and blend over top of all of those flowers. So I'm really saturating the paper with my alcohol marker to get these inks to blend together. So I colored those all in, and then I came back in with a darker marker, the darkest blue that I have, and I just flicked in some color in the center of the flowers to give it a little bit more depth. So I did that for all of my flowers on this panel, and coloring everything in, really trying to blend those shades together and create a lot of depth in the center of the flower. I did the best that I could. I'm not an expert by any means whatsoever. I just like to do basic coloring. I have fun doing simple techniques. So I'm going to adhere this panel down to my black layer, and I'll use my double-sided adhesive for that. And then I got a little bit of an ink smudge on my panel, so I'm going to use my Couture Creations detailer tool, and I'm just going to buff that away. And then I wanted to just trim a little hair off the edge of that black cardstock, and I used my tonic trimmer for that. And then I grabbed my Slimline card and adhered this panel to my card base. And then that's it for this card. I didn't do anything extra, no embellishments, nothing. I think it's just simple and perfect just the way it is. Here's a look at the finished card project. Okay, here are all 3 cards that I made so far here today. Now, I wanted to take this one step further. I wanted to coordinate the envelopes with each of its perspective cards. So I grabbed the coordinating stamp. So for this one, for the tulip, I used that on the pink card. So I'm going to stamp on the envelope with some Dusty Rose ink and just stamp a light sort of ghost image on the left-hand side. And I stamped it a couple of times just to create some interest on that envelope. So nothing standing out, it's just subtle, and it's just adds a little extra touch to that envelope. So I'm going to do the same thing with the green one. I'm going to stamp that large greenery a couple of times. Oh, for the green one, I used Jelly Bean Green ink. And for the last one, I'm going to stamp with some powder blue ink and stamp that floral image on the left-hand side. Okay, and once I'm happy with all that, these cards are complete. Here's a close-up look at all of the projects that I made for you here today. Now, I really had fun making these simple and elegant cards, and I think that you really don't need to add so much to your card to make it look professional and pretty. So that's it for today's video. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend it here with me. As always, I appreciate the support and the time that you spend with me. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe to my channel, please do. I would love to have you along my card making journey. Coming up on screen are a few videos I think you may enjoy, including a link to the Slimline envelope tutorial. So have yourself a lovely day, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!